Welcome. Thank you everybody for being here. So we are talking about how trauma bonds mimic love. This is something that is so prevalent for people thinking that they love a person, because when you feel this deep attachment to a person who hurts you, it feels exactly like love. But a trauma bond is actually this psychological phenomenon where you feel attached to somebody who hurts you. And what this includes is relationships that have this kind of oscillation between cruelty and kindness. Now, the kindness is always delivered in this intermittent way. So sometimes they're nice, and sometimes they're abusive, and sometimes you might have days or weeks where things are terrible, or days or weeks where things are great. It could be changing on the same day. Sometimes you get flowers and apologies, and sometimes you get screaming. Sometimes you get none of these things, and it's sort of just baseline not great or baseline phenomenal. It changes. These relationships are so confusing and they're so addictive, but the truth is that what's happening underneath a lot of this is all the chemicals moving in your body, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin coursing through you. And when things are good, dopamine spikes, you're happy, blissful, in love, things are great. And when things are bad, you feel horrible and you're going through these withdrawals and you're seeking connection back to this person, even though they are the person that hurt you. Something I say frequently is that this person is the one that hurts you and that harms you, but they're also the one who helps you, because the very person that hurts you is the one that you seek out for comfort and repair. And often, not always, there is no repair. Now, sometimes you do get repair, and I'm super air quoting that because repair could be actual flowers and actual apology. It's a fake apology, but you hear the apology, you hear the words, I'm sorry, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes they just gaslight you into thinking that you're the cause of this anyway, right? You're the one who made up this fake issue, and then you believe that it's your fault. But if you can convince yourself that it's your fault, then you can fix it. But actually, they are causing these problems. People who are trauma bonded are convinced that they love this person and often even describe not feeling like they could ever leave this person. It feels like you're stuck. A lot of people describe the overwhelm, helplessness, feeling obligated to this person, feeling responsible for this person, feeling such empathy for them. If you leave, what will they have? Where will they go? Or, everybody else has abandoned them, or they had a tough childhood. They really often feed into this victim, poor me mentality, and it makes us see them as these wounded little birds or wounded little boys when they are grown men making choices to cause harm intentionally, purposefully, to create chaos, because all of this makes you feel like you're stuck. This oscillation of behavior, not to mention, I think is it strategy that they oscillate? Some know what they're doing and they know that they're creating an attachment. I don't know that they think that they're creating a trauma bond, but they understand that this creates an attached dynamic. But I think sometimes too, it's relatively unconscious. And I don't say that to excuse their behavior. They know they're hurting you. I'm saying the pattern is unconscious. And sometimes they're showing you exactly who they are, which is when they're awful. And sometimes they're pretending to be nice. It's not the other way around. They're not good people who do bad things sometimes. They are bad people who pretend to be kind sometimes. When an abusive man pretends to be kind sometimes, there's a couple of things that happen. Number one, he gets something from you, right? He pretends to be kind and you sleep with him. He pretends to be kind and you have a nice weekend. Or he pretends to be kind and then he goes out with the boys on the weekend and gets to ignore you because he was nice to you all week. What's your problem? So there's a lot of reasons for it. Now, one of the reasons is also this sort of like pat on the back, right? Like, I'm not a bad guy. I got her flowers. I'm a good guy. I bought her a piece of jewelry last week. I'm not so bad if she's still sleeping with me. I'm not a bad person. I do things for her all the time. Meanwhile, he did like 3 nice things for you in a year, and he only did them for self-serving purposes. But to him, he can tell himself the story that he's a good person and a good guy. He gets to pat himself on the back. And that's exactly why this works, because you do see the good and the bad. And when there is an oscillation, it's what keeps you confused. I promise you that if he was awful to you 24 hours a day, you would leave. If somebody is treating you awfully constantly. Every single interaction with them, you would walk out the door. What makes it hard is that they're not all bad, right? Sometimes he's really nice, and sometimes he's really funny, and sometimes he this. The amount of women that tell me, but he's my best friend. My best friend doesn't call me names, right? It's ridiculous, but it's like, no, but he just, and we create all of these reasons, right? But we ultimately crave the person. When you are stuck in a trauma bond, you feel like you can't leave. Now, I want to say you can leave. I'm not pretending it's easy. I'm not pretending that you can just walk out the door, but you can learn how to leave, but it feels like dying. It feels like you can't. I used to lay on the bathroom floor and put a towel over my face so my children wouldn't hear me scream crying because the pain was insane. And it is not because he was that great, and it was not because I was really grieving him. It was the thought of not having this life anymore. And it's crazy because the life isn't good when you really think about it, right? I always know there's parts that are good, but I mean, like, I literally thought you could die from crying. I couldn't, I have no words for this, but the truth is so much of this has to do with your nervous system. You are attached physically to this person, and it mimics love. It feels like such an intense feeling that it must be love. And that's not what this is. It's an attachment, and more specifically, it's an unhealthy attachment, but it is compared to an addiction for a reason. I've actually heard somebody refer to this, and I don't know who coined it, and I absolutely love it, but calling this hopium, which is opium, very addictive drug, often, which is what trauma bonding is compared to, and hope, because that's what it is. You are like addicted to the hope that this relationship is actually something and that they can get better. Now, whether or not the person is a narcissist is not the point, because you're not only trauma bonded to somebody who's a narcissist. It could be borderline, it could be narcissist, it could be histrionic, antisocial, psychopath, it could be an asshole, right? It doesn't have to be a diagnosable thing. It is a person who oscillates kindness and cruelty for the purposes of keeping you attached to this relationship. Your nervous system is wired for survival. You are living in a survival response. There is no way that it feels like you can get yourself out, but it feels like love. Now, one of the most interesting feelings, I think, within all of this that I'm talking about is the feeling of relief, because ultimately, when they pull away, and that could be when they're cruel, when they're stonewalling you, when they disappear, when they block you. You know, everybody's situation is different, but whatever that withdrawal of love, affection, kindness, if they're being mean to you, yelling at you, that is so awful that when they're kind to you, you're like, relief. Relief is an interesting feeling in the context of an abusive relationship, or frankly, a relationship. Relief is interesting. Love makes more sense, right? So we tell ourselves that's what it is, right? It's like you've been living in tension and you've been living in pain, and somebody gives you something. And in fact, if you want to even use like a ridiculous example, but it's so true, is you're starving and somebody gives you a cracker, best cracker you've ever had, but it's just a cracker. Probably Great Value brand, okay? And it's stale. But you're starving. So it feels like the greatest thing you've ever eaten, but it's nothing. It's crumbs. And it's not real. But I want people to really understand that there is a chemical aspect to this. This is not just like emotional only. There is a lot going on in the body, both in your nervous system and in all the chemicals. For those asking, because I can see in the comment section how to work with me, you can either visit my website at strongerthanbefore.ca or click the link in my profile, and then you can book a session with me there. I've got clarity calls or packages. I also run group coaching programs that I co-host with Dr. Peter Salarno. So please check those out. I am a certified coach. I have 7 certifications. I've written 4 books. And I work with women specifically full-time to help them break trauma bonds and rebuild their lives after they've experienced an abusive relationship. So feel free to go ahead and book a time with me. And actually someone else wrote this too, right? So everyone talks about leaving, but not once you've left. Now, it's interesting because leaving is something that when you're in a trauma bond, it just feels impossible. It feels like you can't leave. You need to break the trauma bond and then leave. And unfortunately, it's usually the opposite, right? You need to leave, take the action of leaving before you feel ready. The feelings will follow. That's commonly, not to say that you can't break it when you're still in it, but it's a million times harder. It is a million times harder. But having said that, it all feels hard. And I think we always try to seek like, what's the easiest way out? I don't think people actually ask that specific question, but that's what we want, right? What's the easiest way? What's the least painful way? What's the fastest way? There's no fast, easy, least painful way. Everything sucks. Leaving sucks, staying sucks. It's all hard. That's what it is. And we have to do it. And I think I want people to really understand, like, you can do what's hard. It's hard and you can do this. Now, I'm not discounting the other pieces that make it very difficult to leave, financial, physical threats. Like, I'm not trying to pretend that it's easy. We're just talking about the feeling, breaking of the trauma bond specifically. And I think that it's important to reframe this thought that we love them. And that's not what this is. This is an addiction and it feels like love. But all of this, this oscillation of their behavior, it creates this intensity that just feels like, oh, like he's my soulmate. And we get so deeply attached. But the truth is, if you were in a healthy relationship, you wouldn't feel like desperate. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm in a relationship now as an example where I absolutely love him. I absolutely would be devastated if we broke up, and I would survive because I'm not desperate for him. I just, in a healthy way, love him. And this obsession, this desperation, this like, I need this person, that's not normal. Loving someone you could just smush them. Loving them so much you want to hold on tight, that's not the same thing. Loving from a perspective of desperation is really where you might start to go like, is this love or is this something else? Like, it feels almost more intense than love, but we mistake it for love. And that's it, right? Now this cycle, right? The build up, the waiting, the eggshells that we always talk about, right? That nervousness of like, oh, how are they going to be today? I hope everything's okay. I hope they're in a good mood. I hope we don't fight this weekend. I hope everything doesn't get ruined. I hope, right? We are living on hope. And that's a huge part of this. It is hope, obligation, and again, seeing it as trauma. And I have loads of videos that people really should check out on YouTube where I talk about the purposefulness of this abuse, the intentionality, that they know what they're doing, that they're not broken. Narcissism doesn't come from trauma. It is absolutely not where it comes from, because the question should always be, if it comes from trauma, then why isn't everyone who's traumatized abusive or narcissistic? Because that's ridiculous, right? And a lot of people will say, well, no, it's not from trauma. It's from coddling or like overindulgent parenting. Okay. So what about the people who had that type of parenting and aren't narcissists? Like, how do you account for the exceptions? And I mean, fundamentally, the answer is because narcissism and other cluster B personality disorders, there's a genetic component to it. Not to say that it's all that, but you've got to know that there's a genetic predisposition which tells you it's not changing. Environment shapes the behaviors, but environment isn't the only factor. So I know we love to blame the moms, but that's not what it is. It's also not on absent fathers. There's a multitude of factors in what creates narcissism. But the truth is, are we talking about narcissism or are we talking about abusiveness? Because abusiveness is all about entitlement. The root of it all is that they feel so entitled to behave this way. So it's not going to change anything. It's just not. Yeah, people asking for more clarity in the comments, but it's not that they aren't necessary. They may be overindulged as children and they may be traumatized as children, but what I'm saying is that's not the cause. Like this whole, like his mom never taught him how to love. It's ridiculous, because all parenting styles can be different. Men can be narcissists, women can be narcissists, people from wealthy backgrounds, less financially secure backgrounds. It's a multitude of things. So you have to figure out, well, what is the difference? Genetics is the difference. Again, speaking about narcissism, but fundamentally it's the entitlement that is driving the behavior. They're not insecure, it's not shame-based, all those things. But do check out my longer form videos on YouTube for more on that. But there's a real brain chemistry thing here, right? That's the piece that I want people to understand of why this feels like love. Because if we go back to that part, what I was talking about with the chemicals, right? When you are starving, as we say, you want that cracker so badly, you're low in your chemicals and you want that dopamine spike, you're desperate for it. So they could give you a half-dead dandelion and call it a bouquet of flowers, and you're like, oh my God, he's so sweet. No, chuck that across the room. That's not enough. That's not enough. But we tell ourselves that because we go into withdrawal when we pull away, when they pull away, either. We go into withdrawal, and then it physically feels like you need this person. And the only relief is this person. And this moment that I'm describing in this, let's say you have broken up and you're still in a trauma bond. Let's say you are, he's stormed out of the house and you're home, whatever the situation is, there's a withdrawal happening or a discard happening. In that moment, it feels awful. I'm going to oversimplify this on purpose. It feels awful. How do you stop feeling awful? You seek the fastest, quickest way to make the pain stop, which is usually to seek connection from this exact person. But what you need to do is learn how to sit in that discomfort and manage that anxiety and manage that feeling of like you're going to die, but you're not, but feel it and sit in that and cry and get yourself through it. Breath work, regulation skills, distress tolerance. These are the things that I teach in my one-on-ones and in my group coaching programs. These are the skills that you need to get yourself through the moments that feel like you're not going to make it. Because the truth is, you're not going to die from heartbreak, even though it absolutely feels like it. As I said, those scream crying into the pillows. Part of me hopes I never forget what that felt like, but it was awful. But I want to hold on to that in some ways in the distant memory so that I never forget how painful it actually is for people to escape this. I never want to downplay the difficulty. And all we're talking about is the emotional stuff. I understand there's a million other reasons that women and men stay in these relationships, but we get so stuck, right? The missing him, that feeling of like, oh my God, I just can't, like I miss them so much. I just need to hear his voice. That feeling is actually a crash after a high. This is all to do with the chemicals. And when you can I almost want to encourage people to like disassociate from how it feels and just know that this is what your brain is telling you, that your body, your brain is craving something that is bad for you. You need to force this to not be where you reach out to the very person that has hurt you, but actually just cope. I say that like it's so easy, right? Just cope. Whether you use breath work, grounding, distraction, exercise, like there's just so many things that you can do. And sometimes it works for like 20 minutes and then you have to do it again. And you just feel like, oh my God, this stupid ass breath work that this TikTok coach told me to do, it's useless. You have to do it a million times. Sometimes you have to do it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I get it. But what I want people to notice is that it gets better. And it doesn't just go up, 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 and you're better, better, better. Sometimes there's moments where you are like, hey, I'm having a great couple of weeks. And then suddenly something happens and you crash, and that's okay. That's okay. Allow yourself that. Give yourself that grace and that compassion to be not okay today, because tomorrow is going to be a different day. You're going to keep going. You're going to keep learning. But we put ourselves in this blame loop. And especially when we're feeling awful, right? Like it's my fault that he did that. He's right. I did pick that fight. I did. And sometimes I react badly. And, I could have forgiven him more, and I could have been more supportive and more compassionate. You couldn't be as compassionate, supportive, forgiving, none of it, because none of it is okay. None of it is enough. Narcissistic and abusive people are like bottomless pits of soul-sucking hell. All they want is to take and take and take from you, and they will take everything. And somebody earlier in the comments was asking about, will they ever discard you? That final discard? Absolutely they will. Absolutely. Everybody says narcissists need a new supply. Listen, narcissists are human beings and they all behave a little bit differently, right? But they don't all do one thing. They can discard you. And typically when they discard you, I want to say two things about this actually. Number one, when they discard you, it's because they're not getting anything from you anymore. They take and take and take. And when you're empty, you're useless and off you go. And then they want something else. But this is the part two of this little reframe here that helped me so much. When a narcissist discards you, it's because there's nothing left. They've taken everything from you. You are now saying, I have nothing left for you. You are now saying, I can't do this anymore. You need to stop treating me this way. You are advocating for yourself, and they hate it. So who discarded who? Why did they discard you? Because you stood up for yourself. Because you said, I demand better. And they don't like that. So you did stand up for yourself. Your self-advocacy is what made them walk away, which almost makes you kind of go like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't advocate for my, what, right? No, what I need you to look at is that this is a person who only wants you when they're able to exploit you. And then is that love, right? You love them. Do they love you? Is this what love feels like? Is this the version of love that you've been sold? Is this really what you believe and have fantasized love feels like? Because it absolutely isn't, right? This is hell on earth. Trauma bonds are a psychological phenomenon for a reason. And honestly, I experienced this. This is what led me to specialize in trauma bonding. Because to me, I was like, trauma what? And like cognitive dissonance, what? What does that mean? I couldn't believe that this was it. But it also made me, I don't know if happy is the right word, but I was really like, okay, it has a name. Now I can do something about this. I can get myself through this, even though like, oh my God, was it hard? But it gave me language to make sense of this, where it wasn't just me stupidly in love with some person that treats me like crap. There was a name, there was an explanation. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta share this message with the world. People need to know, because I think too many women feel this pull towards someone who's just endlessly ripping your heart out on purpose. Right? I want that to be so clear. They know what they're doing. They do it on purpose. They are hurting you because it gives them this like all powerful, I can hurt you. I can make her happy. I can make her sad. I can control her. It makes them feel powerful. They don't want what we want. People who are disordered have a completely different mindset and completely different motivation. So thinking this person's doing this on purpose, that is like, to some people, you can't even fathom such a thing. But a lot of people will also be like, well, no, because my guy's not that smart. This has nothing to do with intelligence. Nobody needs to be smart to be manipulative and exploitative and hurtful. They are cruel by nature, which, as an aside, phenomenal book recommendation is one called Cruelty by Nature. It came out in October 2025. And it's by Dr. Peter Salerno. Phenomenal book. He's also got great other books, but please check out that book. It's his newest. And it really just drives home that point that this type of personality, this pathological person, is going to hurt you on purpose. It is their nature, and they are not going to change. And I'm telling you, the more that you get this drilled into your mind that it's on purpose and they're not going to change, you will realize that you are banging your head against a wall trying to love somebody through this. And I want you to really recognize that this isn't love. You feel love. And I think that I encourage people to even say that, right? And it's like, but I love him. Stop it. Stop saying that. What you need to say is, this feels like love, but it's a trauma bond. Say that to yourself. Change how you speak to yourself. Stop blaming yourself. Stop thinking that you could have done something differently and that would make him stop hurting you. You could jump through hoops of fire if he asked you to, and it's not enough. He never asked you to jump through hoops of fire. You made that up. He'll just gaslight you. Nothing will ever change a person like this. Oftentimes, somebody who's disordered actually sees your forgiveness as permission for them to keep doing it, right? Like literally, I've heard them say in their own words, out of their own mouths, disordered people say, she knows I cheat on her, but you promised that you wouldn't. Okay. A promise is nothing, it's words. All they have to do is say things to you and you just believe them. So your punishment is, I'm going to keep cheating on you because you're dumb. They honestly think that. Your punishment is that I'm going to keep treating you this way because, like, you know who I am. You know who you married. That's what they think. Like, she just accepts it. Okay, fine, she fights me sometimes and tells me not to, but like, she knows. And you're sitting here like, what? I only took you back because you promised you. They don't care. Promises mean nothing, right? They mean it in the moment because it gets them what they need. They don't mean it the second they walk out the door and go to a club. You know what I mean? It just doesn't matter. They don't care about people. They care about themselves. They lack object relations, which is essentially that they see people as objects. They see people as things that they can use, tools, resources, their children, their wives, their spouses, whatever. They see it as, I take from you. You are a resource. And when that resource is empty, you are cast aside. You are not useful anymore. They only want to take. They want their needs to be met, and they will do that by any means necessary. So when I say that they're doing it on purpose, it's not like they're like, how can I rip Sarah's heart out today? They're just like, if Sarah gets hurt because I want something, like, too bad. Sucks to be her. You're not even relevant. They're not even thinking about you. You're irrelevant. And that's the craziest thing, because what's interesting is they get you to focus your whole life around them. You cater to them. You people please. You fawn. You try to keep things normal, and you try to not pick fights and bring up things whenever you can, but then you learn it's never a good time. So you just stop and you just make yourself smaller and you stop asking, and you're miserable, and you are living in a state of tolerable misery. Is it tolerable is the question, but it feels like, I can love him enough. He's just broken. He can learn this. And I'm telling you, the more you let go of that, the better. But what we are experiencing when we are in this unhealthy attachment, this trauma bond, is also cognitive dissonance, right? I referenced that earlier. And I often, when I speak to my clients in private practice or in my groups, I always kind of ask, like, what do you know about cognitive dissonance? What do you know? Do you understand the phrase? And obviously, yeah, there are some people who've got your little PhDs in narcissistic abuse from YouTube University, and you know exactly what cognitive dissonance is. And then there are some that are like, yeah, I kind of know. It's the confusion, right? Yes. Cognitive dissonance is interesting. It is the name of the discomfort from the confusion of holding two beliefs. And I often use an example like, he is good and he is bad. He is kind and he is abusive. He loves me, but he cheats on me. Okay? You're holding these two beliefs. And they actually can't coexist, where another example might be he's abusive and he's funny. Now that can coexist, but they don't love you and cheat on you. That doesn't coexist, because there's a behavior, an act, and a choice involved in that. A person who abuses you does not love you. The amount of women that are like, no, like, I know he loves me. It's just, do you know that? Are you sure? Can we talk about that? Because no, he doesn't. And it's the harsh reality that nobody wants to hear. You want to hear he loves you, but he's broken. He doesn't love you, and he's not broken. He's doing it on purpose. He thinks he's not broken. He thinks he's perfect. He tells you he's broken. He might beg you on his knees and say, my mom was mean to me and I just don't know, and I promise I'll go to therapy. He's not doing any of those things. He's begging you back to get you there. And then when you're there, he'll do the same thing again. You give him the chance. He will. He absolutely will, right? And yeah, so somebody just wrote this, and actually, like, let's stop blaming them, though. We've got to blame ourselves a little bit more to get out. I don't think I could find it in me to disagree more passionately or more loudly. I loathe that comment so deeply. I am like interrupting my own thought process to call that out, because I find it so disgusting that women do that to themselves. And I'm so sorry that you think that. I'm so sorry whatever like therapist or TikTok coach or whatever the hell convinced you that we got to be more mad at ourselves and blame ourselves more. That's fucked. And there's no other word for it. I really dislike that mindset. I think that people need to stop that. I think that hurts women so deeply. I think that we have enough blame, and that something that Dr. Nadine Macaluso has said, which I think is incredible because it's just so true. She said this on my podcast last season, that we do not have free will, right? We think we do. It feels like you have free will, like you can leave at any time, but that's not necessarily the case. And so if you don't have free will, then what is it about this that's your fault, right? Is it your fault that your parents didn't teach you better? Is it your fault that somebody lied to you? Is it your fault that you believed lies? No. Like, it's just not. And I love this because you can take responsibility for where you are and responsibility to get yourself out without saying it's my fault that this is happening and that this is my fault that I stay, or like it's my fault that I can't get myself out of this. I think that we, as women in particular, right, we're conditioned to give him a second chance and be his helpmate and forgive and be compassionate. And this is what we're supposed to do. But it hurts us. And narcissistic people prey on that. That's why in Christianity, it's rampant. And I'm not saying all Christians are, like, don't take me wrong here, but it's a perfect spot for people who are narcissistic because they can weaponize that. And frankly, even if you're not super religious, the ideology behind like marriage is forever and all of that, it's rooted in this belief that women are meant to stay and be compassionate and help and forgive and kind. Look at the concept of when you see these videos online of like a man doing something to a woman and men in the comment sections are like, well, maybe she cheated. Maybe, okay. So a woman hits a man and it's like, oh, she should be in jail. She should be in jail. Maybe he cheated. Oh, is it not okay? So when a woman cheats, a man can beat her ass. But when a man cheats, a woman needs to just forgive. Yeah, thought so. Exactly. The double standard is insane. So much of this has to do with the patriarchy. It just does, okay? You can't talk about this with totally separating those, but it is wild how much we do blame ourselves, right? It's like his patterns become our responsibility to fix, or we blame ourselves because we're like too stupid to get out of the relationship. Meanwhile, we are experiencing a psychological phenomenon called a trauma bond. This is something that is studied, that is unique, that is fascinating and horrible, but it is conditioning. We get stuck in these relationships and we can't see our way out, and we often need support and help to get out of it. And I do specialize in that, but whether you work with me, a coach, or you work with a therapist, make sure that you're working with somebody who is aware of what a trauma bond is and somebody who knows how to get you out of it. Because I'm telling you, if you're talking with someone and you're like, oh, I'm in a trauma bond, and the therapist is like, oh, that's, let's talk about your childhood, or yeah, a trauma bond, you've bonded over trauma. Yeah, there's lots of different types of trauma bonds. There isn't. There's one type. It's the type that I'm talking about. You're not bonding over a trauma. That's not what this is. And they're not trauma bonded to you. You are trauma bonded to them. There's a power imbalance. That's how this happens. There is a power imbalance. That's how it is. And we get stuck. And now all of this, like the hope that it gets better, the potential that he used to be nice. Like, honey, you know what I mean? He used to be so nice. I don't understand. Well, how do we go back to that guy? That guy's gone. That guy never existed. He was an illusion, a complete myth, the mask, as we talk about, right? So we need to let go of that and just see the reality that this is a person who hurts me, and sometimes they pretend to be nice. That's what happened. An EMDR therapist who asked, what trauma did you bond over? I mean, I wish that we all spent a little bit more time. It's a little bit of a process, but like reporting therapists like that, I don't think you should be allowed to practice EMDR therapy. We're talking about trauma. You don't even know what a trauma bond is. Like, mind-blowing. But having said that, I'm going to sound like I'm defending therapists, and I am slightly, that they don't get educated on this topic. I wish more people knew that. Not to crap on therapists, but to understand that you go out there and you think, well, I need a therapist because I'm struggling right now, and you assume that they understand. Therapists don't understand abuse dynamics, domestic violence, cluster B personality disorders, or trauma as much as you might think. You'd be shocked at what they don't learn in school. And I'm no therapist. I am a certified coach, and I specialize in this, and I stay in my lane. But my God, do some therapists do an unbelievable amount of damage. It's incredible. How can a narcissist ever create a family or have a wife? Well, quite easily. Creating a family is, I don't want to get graphic online here, but creating a family is very easy. and having a wife just means you get married. Like, you don't have to do anything, right? We're talking about the difference between like an adult man who has children and gets married, and then a man who is a husband, a man who is a father. That's not the same thing. Having a wife doesn't make you a husband, in my opinion. But truthfully, a lot of people don't understand it, and I get that. You know, like the lived experience of therapists have been through this too, right? But like you look at somebody like Dr. Peter Salerno, he's been in a relationship with someone who's a narcissist, so he gets it. Dr. Carrie McAvoy, she's been through it, she gets it. There are many professionals who get it, and even ones that are not so prevalent online. But if you are with an expert who both understands how it forms, how to break a trauma bond, including myself, but who has also been through it, it's a little bit, you're going to have a bit of a different experience. There's a lot of things that you don't have to say that you might have to explain. Like if you have to explain what a trauma bond is, or you have to explain, you know, I've had therapists or clients tell me that their therapists say things like, you know, well, when you're ready, you're ready. Yeah, okay. Okay. That's a bad thing to say. A licensed psychotherapist who's been in private practice for 28 years. I disagree with you. That's okay. I don't care. I've had, honestly, like just my own personal count, I've probably had like 25 psychologists and therapists agree with me. So some agree and some don't, and that's okay. You don't have to disagree or agree with facts. That's just makes you wrong. That's okay. What's the difference between abuse or someone that is just indeed broken or has anger management issues? You know, I think that, you know, it's kind of an interesting question because it's common. Like anger management issues, somebody can catch themselves and be like, oh, you know what? I'm feeling really angry. I'm going to change my behavior. I'm going to go seek help. Abuse is a pattern, which is more than two, and they don't change because they don't want to. So, or somebody who pretends they're changing but actually isn't. Somebody with anger management will go get help. Somebody who wants to use it as an excuse, you know, then they're just going to continue to use it as an excuse, right? That's just what it is. It's just always going to be something that they say, but I have trauma, but I don't know what to say. You know, like that's just not what it is. But I do know that it seems like that. What we do is we're sort of like, maybe they're just avoidant. It's an attachment issue. Maybe their mom was mean to them. Maybe they're entitled and they think that they can keep getting away with this. I don't know why we see it differently. I mean, I do know why, because I've been there. So I absolutely saw it differently myself, right? And I mean, even this, right? Like, what about episodes that only happen after alcohol consumption? So what's interesting is in Lundy Bancroft's book, which I have here somewhere, Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft, he actually talks about that excuse of alcoholism. And it's interesting because Dr. George Simon, Dr. Peter Salerno, Lundy Bancroft, Chuck Derry, so many have directly spoken to abusive men who have straight up said out loud, I get drunk so that I can abuse her and then claim that it was because I was drunk or on something. They do it on purpose. They absolutely know. Now, not all, obviously, but yeah, it's an excuse. Now, a lot of narcissists have a coexisting condition, not all, obviously, but their substance abuse issues are pretty common, and they're, you know, unhappy with themselves to a degree, and so they want adrenaline, they want rushes, so they're going to use substances, right? And I'm just going to block this fireball person who's just repeatedly pissing me off in the comments. People say I'm biased because I use gender, and I don't care. So I'm a women's coach, so it's just the language that I use, and people make this straw man argument that when I say he, that I am also saying that women can't be abusive, and it's just so dumb, and it pisses me off so much that I block people left, right, and center. Yeah. So it's, say I lost my train of thought there. And actually, I would like to readdress this therapist who's quite activated in the comments. Coaches, unfortunately, tend to put licensed therapists, I'm assuming you're going to say down. I'm not really sure because you didn't finish your thought there, but you know, what that therapist who was speaking was disagreeing was therapists not knowing much about cluster Bs. You know, it's funny. I was interviewing Dr. Eleanor Greenberg, who's a specialist. She's 81. She's been doing this for 50 years, just on Sunday, actually. And she was also talking to me about how dangerous it is that therapists are not trained, generally speaking, to recognize it. And while some are, and perhaps this woman who is in my comment section, maybe she's trained. But if me, one little person who doesn't know that many people, have had over 25 licensed professionals to my face say this to me, plus many more in the comment sections describe the ways in which they are not trained, then it leads me to believe that that's true, in addition to the fact that I've looked into various educational programs and can see that it's not there. So, you know, proof is proof, right? And I think that the defensiveness, and I've seen this before, like I've had therapists stitch my videos before and be like, you hate therapists. And it's like, I actually work with therapists regularly. I've co-authored books with therapists. I interview therapists. I have a phenomenal therapist. But the defensiveness with which some therapists approach this, with sort of like, you know, you couldn't possibly know, you're just a coach. Or, you know, like, I'm trained, therefore we're all trained. It's just crazy, right? It's so crazy to me when it's just an absolute, unequivocal, indisputable fact that most therapists are not trained on it, right? Not all. Many are, but most are not. And it's not in a lot of the programs that they take. And it also depends if you're like, you know, a psychologist and specializing in what, if you're a licensed social worker, a psychotherapist, where you studied, what school, what program, what you chose to specialize in. Like there's tons of things. I was talking with Dr. Peter Salerno a few days ago, and he was even saying that on Psychology Today, there's when you create like a profile for yourself, you can go in and put in your specialties, but you basically just clickety click. And he said he knows therapists who just click things that they want to specialize in. Like I know enough about this. I'll just click that button and hopefully this type of person will come find me. So it's not necessarily that there's an educational background. And I think that it's quite obvious that there isn't when you look at how many people go to couples counseling and try to get help, and the therapist doesn't recognize narcissism right in front of them, or when therapists say things to clients like, well, are you trauma bonded together? Like it's just the mountains of evidence that demonstrate to me daily. The fact that there's been a really interesting surge of coaches since 2020, actually, I find fascinating. And Dr. Carrie McAvoy, Dr. Peter Salerno, Dr. Nadine Macaluso, I've talked to so many people who are like, I'm so glad that there's a surge of coaches because we need more people who are specialized. Now, are there garbage coaches who don't stay in their lane and talk out of their butt? Absolutely, as there are therapists. So it is what it is. And I think I always recommend people to like meet one or two or three even therapists before you choose one. Make sure they understand, or feel free to try something different and work with a coach. And maybe that's me. You can book a session with me, and maybe that's someone else, because there's phenomenal coaches and therapists out there that you can work with that do that. Yeah, I don't want to get off topic. I'm about to block you because I really don't like you, but coaches surged because they're not regulated, and that's absolutely true. Coaches don't have to be licensed in anything. In all honesty, you can call yourself a coach. I'm just literally blocking her because it's irritating me, but she is right that therapists it's a regulated industry and coaching isn't. So you could find a coach out there who's just like, I'm a coach, and they have no certifications and no clue what they're doing. So do look for their certifications. I list mine on my website, but do look and look at who they talk to and about, if they're content creators, if they're online, like, you know, it sounds whatever, but like, would all these experts be partnering when collaborating with me if I was making things up, right? Probably not. But all that to say, I feel like I got way off topic there because of that. So I want to just get back to the point, which is why leaving feels so impossible when you're trauma bonded. You know, this addiction, and I want to be clear, you're not addicted to the person, you're addicted to the cycle, and that you can break that cycle. And it takes what it takes for any person who's addicted to something, right? withdrawal and no contact and things like that. You don't have to go, because I mean, what if you have children? What if you're still with the person? I get it. Like, there's so much context, and I get into all of this in my one-on-one coaching sessions, and I get into this in my group coaching sessions and in other videos. But people always ask, how do you break a trauma bond? And I wish that there was a quick answer. I wish that I had this thing that I could say that would make you break it immediately. I swear I would give it away for free, right? I really would. But there are 3 steps, and I don't want to make it sound like 3 easy steps, but there are 3 steps fundamentally to breaking a trauma bond. And the first one is education and clarity. This is where you're learning. This is where you're like, what is narcissism? Wait a minute, what's cognitive dissonance? And you are resolving these things, and you're learning and understanding what he's doing and why he's doing it, and getting all the information. I don't think I have it in front of me. Oh no, I do actually. In this book, which is, sorry that it's backwards, but it's called Narcissism Unmasked. You can get it on Amazon. Search it by title, or you can search Lisa Sonni, Sonni, under books on Amazon, and all my books will come up. But this one is Narcissism Unmasked. You're learning all the tactics. This is all the tactics of abuse. And you feel like you get your little PhD in narcissistic abuse. Step 2 is when everything shifts. And this is when you go, I cannot watch one more video about why he did what he did. I need to focus on me. And you start to go, what got me here? From a place of curiosity, not judgment. This is you not blaming yourself. This is you just saying, what put me here? Why am I in this? How do I get out of this? What do I need? What are my unmet needs? What did I think I was getting in this relationship that I'm in fact not getting in this relationship? Compassion. How can I speak to myself differently? How can I just understand me? And then in step 3, it's rebuilding me. How do I move forward without this person? What does life look like? And even getting a little bit practical in this. What do I need? Money, resources, a lawyer, what's life going to look like without this person in my life? Can I take care of myself? Building that life. And in this step, you're building self-love, that you actually see yourself differently, right? So you understand yourself, and then you start to build yourself. So in 3 easy steps, not easy at all, in 3 really difficult steps, this is what I sort of teach. I call it the break and rebuild method. This is how I take people through. I meet people where they're at. If you come to me and you're like, I've got the PhD part, let's do steps 2 and 3. Perfect. That is exactly what it is. Someone's asking to see the book again. Narcissism Unmasked. You can get it on Amazon. I have 4 books, 2 journals, 1 workbook, and then 1 book to read. I also have an online course, which is $97, self-paced, self-guided, do it as fast, as slow as you want, called the Trauma Bond Recovery Course. You can also use a payment plan for that. I have group coaching programs. I have one starting next week. November 13th is when it starts. It's called the Trauma Bond Recovery Group Coaching Program, and I co-host that with Dr. Peter Salerno. I also have Rise and Rebuild. The next one is in December, and that one is also with Dr. Peter Salerno. So that one's more focused on rebuilding after, where the trauma bond recovery is getting you out of being in an active trauma bond. And Rise and Rebuild is like, I'm done with the trauma bond, but I still feel stuck. I still don't know who I am. So that can be a really helpful thing, or you can work with me one-on-one in private sessions as well. I specialize in breaking trauma bonds, and this is why I have chosen to be an expert in this, because I think that it was something that is so difficult for people to understand why they're in it, to understand why it's so hard to break, why you can't leave this person, or why it has been over, whether you left them or they left you, and you feel like so attached to a person. I get it. I really do. The more you can understand trauma bonds, the more you can understand your nervous system and what you need. And so much of the healing stuff comes with somatics. I remember me personally, for those that maybe knew me in real life, like I am so not fluffy, like somatics and breath work. Come on. It works. It's necessary. There's no way around it. I promise you. Just go into it. Somebody's talking about wanting to sign up for the second course. Go to my website, strongerthanbefore.ca, and if you click on group coaching, you'll see the programs there. Have a look, strongerthanbefore.ca, not .com, and you can have a look at the different programs we offer. One started yesterday, what day is it today? Rise and Rebuild started yesterday. There is actually one spot left for that. If you want to sign up, you still can, but otherwise we start in December for Rise and Rebuild, and we start November 13th, and there's another one in December for trauma bond recovery. But please check that out, or work with me one-on-one. Check out my content on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm all over, and I specialize in this because I really do want to help people. I want to bring awareness to this so people understand what they're feeling and what they're experiencing and how to get themselves out. So thank you so much for being here today. I go live once a week, but you can catch all of my longer form videos on YouTube, and I will see you again in the next one. Thanks so much.